old myths and folk tales of Europe, one figure appears again and again, the wild man of the forest. He was said to be huge and stocky, covered in thick hair, with a heavy stare and a deep, rough voice. Sometimes he was an enemy, a creature who stole women and children. Sometimes a frightening but wise hermit, living far from humankind. Stories like these were told across Germany, France, Spain, the Balkans, and even in the distant lands of Scandinavia. Medieval chronicles speak of wild men who lived high in the mountains, being said to be stronger than ordinary humans, yet lacking culture and reason. On old engravings, they appear as muscular figures with wide shoulders, hair-covered bodies, large noses, and pronounced brow ridges. Remarkably, these depictions look almost identical to the scientific reconstructions of Neanderthals made centuries later. It's important to note, these legends didn't arise in just one region. They appeared all across Europe, repeating the same familiar traits. Wild beings living in caves or deep forests, avoiding people, and possessing inhuman strength. Some tales said they came out only at night, hunting animals, or attacking travelers on lonely roads. To us today, that sounds like folklore, a fairy tale. But think about it. How could such similar stories appear among peoples so far apart? Scientists suggest that these myths may be echoes, ancient memories of real encounters between our ancestors and another kind of human, the Neanderthals. Tens of thousands of years ago, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals shared the same lands. They hunted the same animals, used the same caves, and at times, likely competed and clashed. When the Neanderthals vanished, the memory of them may have lingered in oral tradition. Stories passed down from parent to child, generation after generation, slowly transformed real neighbors into forest spirits and wild men. So perhaps those old European legends aren't just fantasy. Maybe they are fragments of ancient memory, echoes of encounters with beings who were human, but not quite like us. Across European folklore, stories often tell of the dwellers of mountain caves. They terrified people, creatures who came out at night, lived among fires, ate raw meat, and behaved more like beasts than humans. In these tales, they were monsters lurking in stone lairs, attacking travelers who dared to cross their paths. But archaeology tells a different story. Those images didn't come from nowhere. Neanderthals truly did leave behind dozens of settlements, and most of them were found in caves. There, archaeologists discovered bones, stone tools, and fire pits. Yet for Neanderthals, the cave wasn't the den of a monster. It was a refuge from cold and predators. They built their shelters, tended fires, and prepared their food. In folklore, these cave savages were often described as strong, rough, and intimidating, and the resemblance is uncanny. Their bones show Neanderthals were stocky, with massive muscles and powerful frames, perfectly built for life in the harsh climate of Ice Age Europe. Some legends claim these beings hunted at night, and once again, archaeology supports the tale. Neanderthals were skilled hunters. They crafted spears, set ambushes, and brought down huge animals, bison, deer, even mammoths. It wasn't blind aggression, it was strategy. It was survival. What's fascinating is how folklore often drew a line between the cave savages and normal people, as if describing outsiders who lived nearby. Today, we know that's not a coincidence. Our ancestors, Homo sapiens, really did encounter Neanderthals. They shared the same lands, and sometimes even the same caves. Over time, those real encounters may have transformed into the fairy tales we know today. So the legends of beings from the caves echo the real lives of Neanderthals with surprising accuracy. In myth, they were terrifying wild men. In reality, they were people too, hunters, builders, and survivors of an ancient world. In old folk tales, the wild people of the forest were often described as silent or even mute. They were said to grunt, growl, or cry out with strange, haunting sounds. To people of the past, that was proof. These beings weren't truly human. They had no language and therefore no mind. But science paints a very different picture. In Neanderthal DNA, researchers found the same FOXP2 gene that gives modern humans the ability to speak. That means they had the biological capacity to form sounds and words. Even the bones of the inner ear suggest that Neanderthals heard the world much like we do, able to perceive the same range of speech frequencies. Legend said, the wild men couldn't speak like humans. That might have been true, but only partly. If Neanderthals spoke, their language, rhythm, and tone may have sounded utterly foreign to our ancestors. To human ears, their speech could have seemed like growls or cries, and over time, memory turned that difference into myth. They could not talk. Archaeology also hints at communication. At Neanderthal sites, scientists have found complex tools, the kind that can't be copied by sight alone. Such skills must be taught, explained, demonstrated, shared. And that means Neanderthals had language, though perhaps not one we would recognize. There's another intriguing detail. Some legends claim that the forest people understood simple commands or even mimicked human speech. Maybe that too reflects reality. Neanderthals could communicate, but their words were incomprehensible to us. So the myths of the silent savages are distorted echoes of truth. Neanderthals were never voiceless. They had a language of their own, one we will never hear again. And perhaps that's why their voices still live on in the old tales, as the eerie cries of beings from the forest. In old legends, the wild men of the forest were almost always linked to caves. They were imagined as beings hiding in stone dens, emerging at night and bringing fear with them. In some tales, they attacked travelers or stole the prey of hunters. In folklore, they were dangerous neighbors, living just beyond the edge of what was human. Archaeology confirms that this connection to caves was no coincidence. Neanderthal sites have been found in caves across Europe, in the Caucasus, Crimea, and even the Altai Mountains. But for them, a cave wasn't a symbol of savagery. It was simply a practical home. Inside, archaeologists have found traces of hearths, animal bones, and remnants of meals. They shielded cave entrances from the wind and used the stone walls as natural protection. Many stories said these wild men came out at night to hunt, and that detail too holds a grain of truth. Neanderthals were skilled hunters. Their weapons were heavy wooden spears capable of striking down massive animals, deer, bison, rhinoceroses, even mammoths. But they weren't monsters preying on humans. They hunted big game because that was how they survived. Myths painted the cave savages as chaotic and wild, but archaeology reveals the opposite. Excavations show evidence of planning and cooperation. They organized group hunts, each individual with a role to play. They used fire, butchered carcasses, and cooked their food. This wasn't chaos, it was structure. It was a way of life. So the legends of beings from the caves didn't come from pure imagination. Our ancestors likely saw people living nearby, different in looks, in habits, in voice. Over generations, those real neighbors became frightening characters in stories. The cave turned into a symbol of wildness, and the night hunt, a symbol of danger. But in truth, the Neanderthals were not monsters. They were people, just a different kind of us. Stories of snow people exist in the folklore of cultures all around the world. In the Himalayas, they're called the Yeti. In the Caucasus and Central Asia, Almas or Almasti. In Siberia, they're known as Chuchuna or forest people. In America, Bigfoot. In Canada, Sasquatch. Different names, yet the descriptions are strikingly similar. In legend, they are tall, powerful beings, covered in hair, walking upright on two legs. They live in mountains or deep forests, avoid human contact, and are only seen by chance, by those lucky or unlucky enough to witness them. They're often described as nocturnal creatures, leaving enormous footprints and echoing the night with terrifying cries. In the Himalayas, tales of the Yeti go back centuries. Local people saw them as spirits of the mountains, guardians of sacred places. During the Soviet era, stories spread across the Caucasus about the Almasti, human-like beings who lived in remote valleys. And in America, Bigfoot was known long before modern headlines, appearing in native legends that predate the 20th century. What's remarkable is that these stories emerged independently, among peoples who never met, never traded, never shared a language. The same image appears: a hairy giant living in the wilderness, secretive, powerful, and dangerous. It suggests that perhaps these myths aren't just coincidence, but echoes of a shared memory, the memory of encounters with another kind of human. Today, legends of the Yeti and Bigfoot are part of pop culture. They appear in documentaries, books, and films. But if you strip away the sensationalism, one question remains: why do such similar stories appear in so many corners of the world? Perhaps they are the faint echoes of an ancient past, memories of those who once walked the earth beside us. When you compare the stories, the Yeti of the Himalayas, the Almasty of the Caucasus, the Sasquatch of Canada, and the Chuchuna of Siberia, one thing immediately stands out: the descriptions are almost identical. No matter the region, the same creature appears: taller than a human, powerfully built, its body covered with thick hair. It walks upright on two legs, leaving behind enormous footprints, tracks that explorers and travelers have claimed to find again and again. Locals say these beings avoid people, but can become aggressive if someone enters their territory. They are most active at night, hunting after sunset, emitting strange cries or piercing whistles. These details repeat from one continent to another: the bipedal walk, the immense strength, the cautious and elusive nature. And there's something else. Many legends emphasize how human-like these creatures are. They have shoulders, arms, faces with eyes and a nose, not beasts or spirits, but something hauntingly close to us. Some tales even speak of mixed unions, or women abducted by these wild men of the mountains. These traits draw a clear parallel to the image of Neanderthals: stocky, muscular, with heavy brows and wide chests. But unlike folklore, archaeology tells us they were real people, with homes, tools, and lives of their own. The striking similarity between these myths across cultures may not be coincidence at all. It might be a reflection of shared human memory, echoes of encounters our ancestors once had with other kinds of humans. Over time, reality merged with imagination, and from that blend was born a lasting image: a towering, hairy giant, a human, but not quite human. So perhaps the Yeti, Sasquatch, and their kin aren't just monsters of legend. There are simply too many details that match to dismiss them as pure fantasy. Maybe, behind those stories, lie the faint memories of the others, those who once lived side by side with us. For decades, stories of the Yeti and other snow people have captured the human imagination. Scientists and explorers have offered countless explanations, each trying to uncover where these legends truly came from. The simplest theory is a matter of perception. In the wilderness, it's easy to mistake a bear standing on its hind legs for something human-like. Large footprints in snow or mud may have belonged to animals, but over time, deformation made them appear almost human. And indeed, such cases have been documented. The mysterious snowman, later revealed to be nothing more than a brown bear or an unusually large beast. Another explanation lies in folklore itself. Every culture has stories about outsiders, the beings who live beyond the familiar world. And from those tales grew the image of the frightening neighbor, the savage of the woods or mountains. In some traditions, they became spirits, demons, or half-humans, symbols of the untamed wilderness and its dangers. But there is a more intriguing hypothesis, that these legends are echoes of real encounters with other kinds of humans. Our ancestors didn't live alone. They shared the earth with Neanderthals, with Denisovans, and even the mysterious hobbits from the island of Flores. Those encounters may have left a deep imprint on our collective memory. Over generations, facts turned into myths, and the image of the others survived, as the Yeti, Bigfoot, and Almasty. Some anthropologists have even suggested that a few of these legends might reflect reality, the final, hidden groups of ancient humans surviving in remote corners of the world. There's no archaeological proof yet, but the very idea could explain why the stories of hairy giants are so persistent and so consistent across cultures. So the theories of the Yeti's origin span from simple mistakes of perception to the haunting possibility that they are memories of our long-lost relatives. And the deeper we explore our ancient past, the harder it becomes to dismiss these legends as mere imagination. When archaeologists first Neanderthal bones, they believed they had found the remains of a separate species, a branch of humanity that had vanished forever. For decades it seemed clear. We survived, and they did not. But discoveries of the last few decades changed that story completely. Neanderthals never truly disappeared. A part of them still lives within us, in our very DNA. Scientists managed to extract and decode ancient Neanderthal DNA from fossilized bones, and when they compared it with our own, they found something extraordinary. Modern humans carry between 1% and 4% of Neanderthal genes. That means our ancestors didn't just meet them, they lived with them and had children together. Even more fascinating is how that legacy is distributed. People of European and Asian descent carry more Neanderthal DNA, while those of African origin have almost none, because Neanderthals never lived in Africa. This perfectly matches what we know about migration. Homo sapiens left Africa, met the Neanderthals in Eurasia, and there, their bloodlines merged. Geneticists have also found that different human populations inherited different sets of genes. Some are linked to the immune system, others to skin and hair, and still others to metabolism. In other words, Neanderthals didn't just leave traces in us, they left traits that still shape how we live today. So, in a surprising way, the old myths about the other people found their scientific confirmation. The Yetis and Bigfoots may remain legends, but one thing is certain: these other humans were real, and their legacy still runs through our veins. Every one of us is not just Homo sapiens, but also in part a descendant of the Neanderthals. When scientists began to closely examine the Neanderthal genes hidden in modern human DNA, they made a remarkable discovery. Those ancient genes still shape us today. Not only the way we look, but also how we stay healthy, how our bodies fight disease, and even how we feel and behave. First, the immune system. Many of the genes that defend us from viruses and bacteria came directly from Neanderthals. They helped our ancestors survive in Europe and Asia, lands filled with unfamiliar climates and new pathogens. But there's a trade-off. The very same genes that once protected life can now increase the risk of autoimmune diseases when the body mistakenly attacks itself. Second, our skin and hair. Neanderthals lived through the freezing world of the Ice Age, where sunlight was scarce and the cold relentless. Their genes helped adapt the body to that harsh environment. From them, we inherited variations that influence skin and hair pigmentation, the reason some people have lighter complexions and fair hair today. Third, metabolism. Some Neanderthal genes are linked to the way our fat cells store energy. For Ice Age hunters, that was vital. It allowed them to go longer without food. But in the modern world, those same genes can lead to obesity and metabolic disorders. And there are even more surprising connections. Recent research suggests that certain Neanderthal variants affect how we sleep, how we respond to stress, and even our susceptibility to depression. Scientists are cautious about these findings, but it seems clear that the Neanderthal legacy touches not only our biology, but our psychology as well. So the wild men of ancient myths were more than just forgotten neighbors from the past. They still influence who we are, how we look, how we heal, and how we react to the world around us. We may think they vanished long ago, but in truth, millions of people today carry their biological legacy within them, every single day. Today, we know for certain, the Neanderthals did not vanish without a trace. Their blood, their genes, their legacy still live within us. And the very idea of the other humans never disappeared from our culture either. It survived, in myths, in folklore, and even in modern tales of the Yeti and Bigfoot. When we hear those stories, they sound like pure fantasy. But remember, only 40 or 50,000 years ago, our planet was home to several kinds of humans. Homo sapiens shared the Earth with Neanderthals, Denisovans, and other lost relatives. Only recently did we become the last ones standing. Some scientists call myths a kind of collective memory. For thousands of years, people retold the same stories about encounters with others who were not quite like us. At first, those stories described real neighbors. Later, they became folktales about forest savages, and in modern times, legends of snow people. Archaeology may show that Neanderthals are gone, but culture seems unwilling to let them go. And genetics has only deepened that feeling. When scientists discovered that every person of European or Asian descent carries between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA, many began to see those ancient legends differently. In a way, the snowman does exist, not somewhere in the mountains, but right here within us. We are his descendants, at least in part. So Neanderthals are not just figures from history books. They are part of who we are, part of our identity. They are the ghosts of the past, no longer walking the forests, but living on in our DNA and in our stories. The myths of wild men of the forest and the modern legends of the Yeti may sound like fantasy, yet too many details line up with reality. Our ancestors once lived side by side with other kinds of humans, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and the tiny hobbits from the island of Flores. To Homo sapiens, they weren't beasts or spirits, but thinking beings, just different. Their encounters may have been rare, dangerous, sometimes even peaceful, but the memory of them endured. The old tales of cave savages and giants of the woods may be ancient recollections, carried through countless generations. Unable to explain who these neighbors were, people turned them into monsters. Yet archaeology and genetics reveal a deeper truth. Those stories were rooted in reality. They came from encounters with real people, with their own culture, language, and traditions. Today, we know this beyond doubt. Neanderthals live on within us. Their DNA is part of our genome. Their traces remain in our skin, our immune systems, and even in our minds. And that echoes the oldest myths in a haunting way. The snowman we search for in the mountains has already been found, inside each of us. Still, one question remains, one that keeps this mystery alive. Could some ancient humans have survived longer than we think? Archaeology continues to surprise us, revealing new species once thought lost forever. So, what if, somewhere in a remote valley, the descendants of the forest people still exist? We can doubt, we can debate, we can search for proof, but one thing is certain. Humankind has never been alone on this planet. And perhaps the legends of the Yeti and Bigfoot are not mere fantasies, but echoes of a time when we shared the earth with others like us. So ask yourself, do you believe the Yeti might be the last living trace of our ancient relatives?